Hello and welcome back to the Odds Now YouTube channel for the latest edition of the Premier League betting show. It's Matchday 13, so we're officially a third of the way through the Premier League season, and we do have runaway leaders at the top of the table at the moment in Liverpool. A huge blockbuster clash this Sunday between Liverpool and the faltering champions Manchester City could stretch that gap to 11, which seems borderline uncatchable, but it's very, very early, isn't it, Brad? But yeah, it's certainly been an eventful start to the season at the top, particularly for you as a Liverpool fan. How are you feeling about it all?
Yeah, I'm good. I was there to see us beat Real Madrid on Wednesday. We were speaking off camera, though. I'm just worried that we are maybe peaking a little too soon, but we were right up there till the end last season. So fingers crossed things can carry on as they are.
Yeah. Long, long way to go, but you cannot grumble at the start. Well, if you're watching the Premier League betting show for the first time, let me just quickly run you through what happens here. Myself and Brad will alternate the games and we'll run you through all 10 matches from the upcoming fixture slate in England's top flight. And we'll point out a best bet in each game just to give you some guidance when it comes to placing your singles and your accumulators over the coming weekend. Well, we have some Friday night football to look forward to this evening. Brad is going to kick us off with that. Brighton high flying on 22 points. They're actually level on points with some of the supposed title challengers, and they're home to Southampton, who, despite some credible performances in recent weeks, still struggling for points. Brad, how do you see this one going?
Yeah, we'll start with Brighton. They've been fantastic, haven't they, so far this season? Picked up a great win last week, 2-1 away at Bournemouth. If you look at the goals that they scored, some of the football that they played in the build-up to both of those goals was absolutely sublime. I think the man that stood out was João Pedro as a second consecutive game, in the league where he scored and assisted in. It was a brilliant pass for Karam Matoma's goal. I think that was Brighton's second goal on the day. The only negative, I think, was the harsh red card to Carlos Baleba. I think it's incredibly harsh, but then they're able to appeal that because it was a second yellow. But the result does now mean that Brighton have only lost one of their last 6 in the Premier League, and 4 of those games they've won. So Fabian Hurtzler, again, we sing his praises every week on this show, and rightfully so. They're doing brilliant so far after De Zerbi left last season. The Premier League table, if you were to look at it, suggests that they could be set for another 3 points again here against Southampton. But the Saints did push the aforementioned league leaders Liverpool all the way last weekend. They found themselves 2-1 up, in fact, before eventually losing 3-2 down on the South Coast. I'm sure they'll be kicking themselves for some of the mistakes that they made to throw away a couple of goals against Liverpool. It's something that's happened to them a few times this season now, but I'm sure they'll also be taking heart from that performance. A lot of the questions around Southampton coming into the season, and questions which have lingered, I think, as the games have passed, around their attacking output. But they did look very dangerous throughout that match down at St Mary's. But they are still in need of points. Of course, you can't get away from that. You can't escape the fact that they've only picked up 4 so far and are still sitting bottom of the table, and they're already 5 points adrift of safety. So, as Matt said, there have been improvements in performances in recent weeks, but they need to start converting them into points now. We're getting to this packed Christmas schedule, which can work for you if you can hit form, but it can also work against you, and they don't want to be heading into the new year looking at the chasing sort of teams above them, knowing they need to go on almost a perfect run in the second half of the season to escape relegation. You've got to praise them, I think, for their willingness to play the football that they play, but at times it does seem to be borderline naive. That game against Liverpool last weekend, there were so many times where, as a neutral, you just be sitting there thinking, just get rid of the ball. You don't need to be playing with the ball inside your own 6-yard box on the edge of your own penalty area. There's a time and a place, and they do seem to be a little bit too loyal to that approach at times. In terms of a betting angle for this one, Brighton, they've actually won 3 of the last 5 against Southampton in the Premier League. But remarkably, I was surprised to see this. Their home record isn't as convincing against them. They've only won 1 of their last 6 matches against Southampton down at the Amex, though that win did come in their last meeting there in May 2023. Ultimately, I expect Brighton to have too much here. I don't think that's a too controversial a statement. They've shown their quality consistently so far this season and come in firm odds-on favourites. But I've found a way to boost that price a little further. I mentioned the concerns surrounding Southampton's supposed attacking outlet, or lack of an attacking outlet, but they have scored in all 12 meetings that they've had with Brighton in the Premier League to date. All 5 of Brighton's last 5 Premier League matches have also seen both teams score, so they are winning games, but they are conceding goals as well. And coupled with the improvements that I think we saw from Southampton last weekend against Liverpool on the front foot anyway, I think getting Brighton to win and both teams to score at 13-8 looks an incredibly fair price. That comes in with Sky Bet. and almost a little side bet as well, one which I want to flag. I mentioned him just, João Pedro. In his last 2 games, he scored and assisted in both. He comes in this weekend at 5 to 6 to score or assist again, generally with multiple sports books. So I think that's certainly worth taking note of, even if you're including it in a multiple, a bet build or whatever. He's in great form right now. He's been fantastic for Brighton last season. He's carried it on into this season. I think he's been involved in 6 goals in his last 5 matches in the league. And like I said, scored an assist in his last 2 outings. So I'm sure he'll be fancying his chances of adding more to his name against the team who are currently sitting at the bottom of the Premier League table.
Okay, so Brighton win with both teams to score. Brad's best bet, but also a special mention for the inform João Pedro, who continues to impress in that Seagulls front line, doesn't he? Well, back to me then for Wolves versus Bournemouth, which is our first Saturday 3 p.m. 4 games on 3 p.m. on Saturday to take a look at, the first of which is this one. And I will also just put the win-draw-win odds along the bottom of your screen for all of this weekend's fixtures as well, so you can be taking a look at those. But back to this fixture, well, Wolves, they had the most disastrous of starts, didn't they, to this campaign, but things are finally looking up. They recorded back-to-back wins last weekend, having only won 2 of their previous 22 in the top flight. So they're looking to make it 3 straight victories for the first time since last December, actually, as it goes. But I've been very impressed with their performance levels, even prior to the 2 wins. And I've said a couple of times on this show, it feels like their turnaround is coming for Wolves and the quality is going to start shining through. And I think it finally is the case. Credit to the club for sticking with Gary O'Neill through that wobbly start. And hopefully they're going to continue on that upward curve now. A man that's been at the heart of their improvement has been Matheus Cunha. He's just been unbelievable in the last few weeks and topped his great performance off with 2 stunning goals in the 4-1 win at Fulham. If you haven't seen them from last week, definitely go and check them out on the highlights. Really is a class act in this Wolves team. I think he's got 10 direct goal contributions in 12 games for a team that have spent a lot of the season at the bottom of the league. So it wouldn't be a surprise to see Cunha poached by one of the league's leading lights. From a Wolves perspective, they'll be hoping to hold on to him and build the team around him, but that may be easier said than done. We know they do have a little bit of a selling policy with their best assets, but they'll enjoy him while they have him, and he really is a precocious talent. So enjoying watching him. And this is a game where they'll come into it, particularly with the home advantage, feeling like they can make it 3 wins in a row, because Bournemouth, although they're very capable on their day, you have to say they are a hard team to work out. They've only won 4 games this season. 2 of those were against relegation strugglers in Everton and Southampton, and the other 2 were against Arsenal and Man City, 2 of the teams we'd be expecting to win the league. So to be competing to win the league. So it really is a strange set of results for this Bournemouth side, who they only kind of have one way of playing, very front foot, very attacking, they take risks. And I think that'll suit a Wolves team who are having a lot of joy on the counter-attack at the moment. I mean, that game with Fulham, they actually fell behind. And there was a lot of spaces to be exploited in behind the Fulham back line, as Fulham could have killed the game off and gone 2-0 up, but they didn't. And that's where Wolves are lethal in the transition. And I think they're going to get more chances in the transition here against Bournemouth. But I do actually think that Bournemouth are probably slightly superior in terms of in possession. So it very much is a difficult game to work out how it's actually going to pan out in terms of the result. But one thing I do see here is goals. Wolves' games have absolutely leaked goals at both ends this season. 48 goals in their 12 games, which is obviously an average of 4 per match. And that trend has only increased recently as well. 4 of their last 6 games have seen 4 or more goals in them. We know they're in good scoring form now, but we also know that Bournemouth possess a really strong attacking threat. Evan Nielsen has hit a good run of form, hasn't he? Settling into things. They have really good threats right across the pitch as well. So I feel like Bournemouth and Wolves could knock 7 bells out of each other, to be honest, in this game. And I think it could be an entertaining affair. So rather than trying to call it, I'm going to go for yet another Wolves game to produce over 3.5 goals. You're still getting a very generous price about that outcome. 33 to 20 currently available with BetMGM. And that is a bet that I definitely want to be with this weekend. Back to Bradford, the next 3 p.m. kickoff, which is Crystal Palace taking on Newcastle. Newcastle, disappointing defeat on Monday night against West Ham, but we're looking to bounce back quickly against a struggling Palace side.
Yeah, I agree. Palace, they're certainly not where they thought they'd be at the start of the season, given how well they performed under Oliver Glasner in his first season. Well, he came in halfway through the season, didn't he? But they certainly exceeded expectations towards the end of last season. It hasn't quite gone to plan so far this term, but they did show heart in a 2-2 away draw at Aston Villa last weekend, though I'm sure they would have been disappointed to have led twice and not leave with all 3 points as they did. Well, they beat Villa in the Cup, didn't they, at Villa Park a couple of weeks ago? Unlucky not to repeat that result here, but they are still now without a win in their last 3 matches in the Premier League and are languishing in 19th on 8 points. So again, they also need points, as touched upon with Southampton a moment ago. I'm sure they'll be boosted, though, by the potential return of Eberechi Eze this weekend, at least to the squad. At least I think he's been assessed ahead of kickoff, so he could be back in the matchday squad this weekend. It's one to keep an eye on ahead of kickoff. We turned to Newcastle, as you said, Matt. They were stunned, weren't they, in that 2-0 home loss to West Ham on Monday. Most were tipping Newcastle to win and win well, yet they were turned over by a struggling Hammers side. It's almost the story of their season, Newcastle. They've been very stop-start, looked to have turned a corner recently with wins over Arsenal and Forest, only then to get undone at St James's Park. I think on the winners line, this is a very tough match to call, and therefore I'm not comfortable really backing either result because I just don't know what to expect from this game. Given the inconsistencies, particularly of Newcastle and the up and down nature of Palace in the last couple of weeks. So I'm going to go down the player prop line instead. Newcastle have just one clean sheet in the last 5 in the Premier League. They're conceding an average of 12.2 shots during that period, and they're also averaging an alarming 1.57 expected goals against on away soil so far, which I'm sure will be music to the ears of Crystal Palace striker Jean-Philippe Mateta. The Frenchman was in superb form during the second half of last season, as I touched upon. He's only got 5 goals in all competitions so far this season, but does tend to be more involved when Palace are playing at Selhurst Park. All of those 5 goals have came on home turf. And while Palace have certainly flattered to deceive recently, and particularly in the last home game against Fulham, where they lost 2-0, Mateta was still heavily involved. He recorded 4 shots in total across the 90 minutes, 2 of which were on target as well. So I'm going to back him to repeat that feat this weekend. I think that's a very, very fair price. At 9-2. I think it looks far too big for him to have over 1.5 plus shots on target, considering Newcastle's poor defensive showings recently. So that's one which stood out for me in this game. Jean-Philippe Mateta over 1.5 shots on target at 9-2 with multiple sports books. Certainly a fair price, and I wouldn't be surprised at all to see that one come in. Like I said, given the defensive woes that Newcastle have currently endured.
A big price. I like that one. Good strong case made by Brad there for Jean-Philippe Mateta to pour more misery on Newcastle, who will have been very disappointed with that showing and have a lot to prove with their lofty expectations and hopes this term. Back to me for the next 3 p.m. then, which is Nottingham Forest taking on Ipswich. And Forest had the stuff of dreams in terms of their start to the season, but they're just starting to bump back to reality a little bit now with back-to-back defeats. Not that anybody would have really expected them to get anything at the Emirates last time out, but a 3-0 loss, and I don't think they even registered a shot on target. It really was a pummeling there. So back to the drawing board for Forest, and they're back on home turf against an Ipswich side that they will expect to beat. But I do feel like Ipswich maybe aren't getting the credit they deserve in a lot of quarters at the moment. They may not be stringing the wins together, but they have had 6 draws in the Premier League so far in their opening 12 games, along with a solitary win. So they're actually avoiding defeat more often than they're being defeated, which I think is a really impressive feat for a team that came up, with budget constraints. They've not spent heavily in the summer. They've largely stuck with the squad that got them there from the Championship. And I think they're really doing well and giving a good showing of themselves. Whether or not they managed to stay up is another matter, but I don't think many gave them much of a chance, and I still don't see them getting that much credit, really. But when I watch them, I'm always generally pretty impressed by them. I think they had Man United there for the taking last week in Ruben Amorim's first game. They just couldn't quite take their chances, but again, a stellar showing nonetheless, and they'll come here confident. That said, Nottingham Forest's home record has always been good, really, since they returned to the Premier League. They're always pretty fearsome at the City Ground, and they have been particularly this season. So I think Forest are very worthy favourites for this game, but I don't think Ipswich will give it up easily. So I am actually reluctant to back Forest at quite short odds on price, even though I think they're justifiable favourites. I just don't want to oppose Ipswich too lightly. I do think Forest will score, though, and when Forest score, generally it is Chris Wood on the score sheet. He's already served me well on this show this season with an anytime and a first goal scorer winner a couple of weeks ago. I'm going back to the well again with Chris Wood here. There's 6-4 quotes available on him to score anytime, and I think that is really fair because he only played the last 20 minutes against Arsenal because he'd been away on international duty with New Zealand. Now, yes, they were playing Mickey Mouse opposition, but he scored 5 goals in those 2 games for New Zealand, having already scored 8 goals in the Premier League this season. So he's one of the world's most informed strikers in terms of a top division. So Wood, he's always been a streaky player all the way through his career. I think coming back into this at home, confidence extremely high against an Ipswich side that, as impressive as they are, don't keep many clean sheets, do give up chances. It's hard to see him not getting on the score sheet. And I think quotes of 6-4 about him scoring any time are the way to play this game. So that'd be my best bet. Chris Wood, anytime goal scorer, 6-4, and that price is available pretty much across the board. But Bet365 probably the likeliest to hold it up, I would say. Brad, we'll fire it back over to you for the final 3 p.m, which is Brentford taking on Leicester.
Yeah, we'll start with the hosts, Brentford, who I think will have been content to hold on for a point at Everton last weekend in a 0-0 draw, considering they played over half that game with 10 men. Christian Norgard harshly sent off, I believe has since been rescinded, on appeal. But anyway, that's their first time avoiding a defeat on the road in the Premier League this season. Brentford, they'd lost their last 5 outings on away soil heading into that game, so I'm sure they'll be happy to take a point from that one, particularly given the circumstances, as I said. And I'm sure they'll be happy to return to the GTEC Community Stadium this weekend too. Remarkably, they boast the best home record in the Premier League so far. All of their points prior to that match at Brentford had came in their home fixtures, so they're certainly a force to be considered when you're travelling away to face Brentford this season. And though they've never ever won a Premier League match against Leicester, remarkably heading into this weekend, I'm sure they'll be confident of changing that this weekend. The Foxes currently are without a manager after sacking Steve Cooper, despite being in the job only 5 months, but they do look. But if the reports are to believe, they're set to appoint Ruvan Nistelrooy, of course, who was briefly in charge of Man United in an interim role after they changed their manager. And he remarkably recorded 2 victories over Leicester during his brief stint as interim boss at Old Trafford last month. So he's had a few opportunities already to take a look about the current setup should he take over at the King Power. Leicester have now lost 3 of the last 4 in the Premier League, but they are outside of the relegation zone. They're all 1 point above the dreaded drop zone, albeit. But I think there were some eyebrows raised when the news started to fill in about Cooper losing his job. But I think once you take a closer look, suggestions of a dressing room having been lost, fallouts with key players. I think Leicester wanted to be proactive and almost get ahead of the problem this side of Christmas to avoid a dreaded relegation scrap down the stretch of the season. As touched upon from a betting angle, in terms of finding the betting angle, Brentford's record against Leicester isn't great. They've drawn 2 and lost 2 of their 4 Premier League meetings against them. But as I said, given the form of both sides, particularly their impressive home form, I'm sure they'll be confident of changing that on Saturday. They're unbeaten at home so far, Brentford. They've won 5 and drawn 1 of their 6 matches there so far. Combined with Leicester's impressive scoring record, they've scored in all but 1 of their Premier League matches so far this season. And Brentford have also conceded in all of their home matches so far this season. There's been some thrilling watches. I've been getting Brentford to win and both teams to score at 21-10 with Bet365. Over 2-1 is incredibly fair, and that's certainly where I'll be lumping my money. I think that price is shortening though, so it's best to jump on it now. You might not be able to get a price that big as we edge closer to kick off. But yeah, man, where are we going for this one? I think that's a very, very fair price indeed. Brentford to win with both teams to score, given what we've seen from both of them.
Very hard to oppose Brentford at home, like you say, an exceptional record at the GTEC this season. And just one more game then for us on Saturday to take a look at. And it's the late kickoff. It's West Ham versus Arsenal. And yeah, as Brad mentioned, a lot of people fancy Newcastle to win well. Hands up. I was one of those. I really did think Newcastle would give this West Ham side serious problems, but fair play to West Ham. They dug the result out. I do think that they've rode their luck a little bit. Newcastle spurned a lot of good chances, but West Ham took theirs, and that's ultimately what they needed. It releases some of the pressure on Julian Lopetegui. I don't think it releases all of it because he's straight back in with a very tough fixture here. And, fans have quite a short memory when things aren't going so well. So, yes, it's bought him some time. I would question how much time it's actually bought him. But, yeah, if they can go and get a result here, that changes the mood completely, doesn't it? But, West Ham, it's not gone to plan, has it, this season so far on the whole? I did think that Carlos Soler coming into their midfield gave them a lot better balance last weekend, a little bit more energy. They've looked very leggy and lethargic in the middle of the park to me this season. Edson Alvarez, who's been suspended about 3 times already, looks a little bit of a liability in there. And I just thought Soler just gave it a little bit more balance because Souček, as dangerous as he is, maybe not the most athletic, isn't he? So maybe they've stumbled onto something there and that could bode well for them in the future. But this is going to be a tough old game. Arsenal have come back from the international break absolutely purring. Thumped Nottingham Forest, as I mentioned earlier, winning that 3-0, restricting Forest to not having a shot on target. Went away to Sporting Lisbon for what looked like a very difficult Champions League game on paper and absolutely took them apart. 1-5-1 there. I've seen some people comparing it with Man City's effort there. I would just maybe point out that Ruben Amorim was in charge at the City game and wasn't for the latest game. But that said, Arsenal I still think were exceptional. It was one of the best performances of the season from them in all competitions, and I think they carry that confidence into this game. Finding it very hard to see how Arsenal don't win this. Lopetegui is a bit of a pragmatist though, and with Arsenal 1 to 2 shots to win this, I think he will maybe accept that West Ham can't go out and try and dominate this game as much as the home fans would love to see the team on the front foot. I think they'll play it in quite a cautious manner, try and keep it tight. I think they will ultimately come up short. I think it'll be a frustrating performance for West Ham's fans, who would probably rather see their team go down having a go. But yeah, I just see Arsenal grinding this out by 1 or 2 goals. So rather than take the 1-2 about Arsenal, I thought backing Arsenal to win with under 4.5 goals in the match, very much closer to evens, is probably the way to play it. 17-20 available with, I think it's Coral and Ladbrokes, and that looks like a really fair price to me for the late kickoff. Sunday, we have 4 games to look forward to, and it's a good 4 games as well. Brad is going to kick us off with one of the 1:30 kickoffs, which is Chelsea taking on Aston Villa. And Brad, Chelsea, no one's really mentioning them, but if we're considering Arsenal title contenders, Chelsea level on points with them and playing well, are they playing themselves into the mix?
I think they've certainly got the quality in their squad. I don't know whether they'll maintain it between now and the end of the season, but I think one thing which can be said about this game is it's a big match between 2 of the top 4 hopefuls. I think it'll be one of these 2 sides probably which fill that 4th slot in the Champions League. If we start with Chelsea, like as you said, they sit pretty in 3rd right now after 12 matches. And my notes here, I've actually got I've written here level on points with title chasing Arsenal, and they're only a point behind Man City as well, the current champions in 2nd. So I think, yeah, if you're going to consider Arsenal at this stage, it'd be wrong not to include Chelsea in that bracket. We'll see how they fare the other side of Christmas in terms of what their aspirations should be for this season. But yeah, it's been a brilliant start for Enzo Maresca. They could find themselves in 2nd by the end of the week. In fact, depending on other results elsewhere, they're unbeaten in the last 4 in the Premier League too, courtesy of that 2-1 win at Leicester last week. They never really had to get out of 2nd gear, to be honest. But it does mean they are without a clean sheet in the last 7. Though considering that late Leicester penalty right at the end never really threatened a comeback Leicester, given how late the penalty how late in the game, the penalty was. But still, Chelsea struggling to keep clean sheets. But nevertheless, they'll certainly be satisfied with where they are right now heading into December. They face an Aston Villa side who are enduring a pretty barren run. I think it's fair to say they've not won any of their last 7 in all competitions, Villa. But I do think some of those results in that run is slightly deceiving. They played well in the first half against Tottenham before they eventually got beat. They were competitive against Liverpool a couple of weeks ago, and were also harshly denied a late winner against Juventus in the Champions League earlier this week. For the life of me, I can't work out why that goal was disallowed towards the end. I think it was Morgan Rogers who scored it. It was bizarre officiating, but the 0-0 draw against Juventus, I guess, still a good result for Villa considering where they were a couple of years ago. But yeah, 7 matches without a win. They'll want to get that off their back, I'm sure, particularly heading into this busy Christmas schedule. But they are led by one of the best managers on the continent. I think it's fair to say, Unai Emery. And they're a far better side than those recent results suggest, and they're perfectly capable of overcoming and overturning their current form potentially this weekend. Chelsea do come in odds-on favourites to win at Stamford Bridge, which is understandable given the recent results of both in recent weeks. But I couldn't believe Aston Villa come in at 18-5 on the winners line. I think that is far too big when you consider what we've seen from Villa last season and this season. They started the season very, very well. Okay, it's not gone to plan in recent weeks, but 18-5, not far off 4-1 for Aston Villa to go and win at Stamford Bridge like they did last season. I think that's far too big, and that's why I will be putting that up as my best bet this weekend. I don't think you can turn that price down when you consider the quality. If you're guns to the head, if you were to ask me who I think would win, I probably would edge towards Chelsea, but at 18-5, I'm absolutely going to snatch your hand off for that to back Villa. They got enough quality in that team. Ollie Watkins, John Duran, Morgan Rogers, and others, of course, as well, to go there and upset Chelsea. Like I said, Chelsea haven't got the best defensive record. I think there's still some uncertainty about their back four. Reece James, the poor guy, is ruled out again until 2025. And now into the new year, I think there's still questions over that centre-back pairing of Colwill and Fofana. There's certainly areas to exploit for Villa. And like I said, at that price, I'll be snatching your hand off for that at 18-5. I couldn't believe it. That comes in with multiple sportsbooks, bizarrely. And that's certainly, that's where I'll be going for this one, Matt.
Okay, Villa 18-5 for Brad. Then they've served you well this season, Villa, as well. I seem to remember you've had them up a couple of times at big prices. So yeah, maybe been underestimated a tad due to recent form. Well, another game, London Derby on Sunday to look forward to is Tottenham taking on Fulham, and Tottenham arrive fresh off the back of a 4-0 thumping of Manchester City, don't they? And that just summed up their season of inconsistently brilliant. When they fancy it, they really are a joy to watch Spurs, and they took City apart there on the break with some fantastic goals as well. But I don't want to worry Spurs fans, and I'm sure you're more than aware of this, but their last 7 Premier League games have gone win, loss, win, loss, win, loss, win. So you don't need me to say what's coming next, but no, obviously life isn't that simple, but it's a worrying trend, and it's nothing that will surprise anyone to hear that Spurs are really struggling for consistency this term. Fulham, meanwhile, they come here on the back of that painful 4-1 loss to Wolves, and they went ahead early in that game through Alex Iwobi's great strike, and they had a couple of chances at 1-0 and at 1-1, so that game definitely could have panned out differently. Wolves were clinical, Fulham probably wasted their chances. It wasn't an absolute beating like the scoreline suggests, so I don't think they should worry too much, and I do think they're a dangerous outfit. The table tells you that. They're in the mix for a European spot at the moment, and backing Spurs at like a prohibitively short price, given everything I've just said, doesn't really appeal. I mean, I do feel Fulham have the tools to hurt them, particularly on the break. And Spurs like to play on the break themselves, don't they? That's why they had so much joy against Man City. They were able to sit in and counter. I think Fulham will be happy to sit in here away at Spurs. So it's a different challenge for them. Not to say that they can't do it, but just a word of caution at the prices, I think. So I won't be diving and getting stuck into Spurs. I can't quite bring myself to back Fulham, despite them being a juicy price. So I've gone down the player line. And yeah, the line I like is Raul Jimenez, the Fulham striker. Now, Tottenham have got big problems at the back in terms of injuries. Against Man City, they got through it unscathed, but they had a centre-half pairing of Radu Dragusin and Ben Davies, which is far from first choice. It's fair to say, and they got through it, as I say, but they've now suffered another massive blow with Vicario, their goalkeeper. He was playing with a dislocated ankle for the last part of that game against City. He's got time on the sidelines now. And their second choice keeper is also injured, so it's going to be Fraser Forster in net. Now, Fraser Forster has had a decent career, but he's now a veteran. He's a third choice keeper, and he's there more to what I could see in a coaching capacity and an experience capacity. So for him having to actually play Premier League fixtures is not ideal, particularly with Ben Davies and Dragusin as his centre-half area in front of him. So while I do think Spurs could blow Fulham away going forward, can't see them keeping a clean sheet, and I can't see them not conceding. Now, Raul Jimenez obviously is a traditional physical number 9. He's going to be up against an unusual centre-half pairing, and he'll be able to exploit a goalkeeper who is rusty and possibly not at the level anymore for my money. So I think Jimenez to score or assist any time is just shy of 2-1, and that's the way I'm going to play this game. I think that he'll have fun against that centre-back pairing. He should have scored last week. I missed an absolute sitter, hit the bar from 6 yards open goal. But he has been having quite a good run of form other than that, Raul Jimenez. So yeah, just shy of 2-1, 19-10 for him to score or assist in the game looks like a fun way to play it. Brad, your final game of the weekend is Manchester United, Ruben Amorim's first Premier League home game at Old Trafford, and they welcome Everton.
Yeah, Ruben Amorim, if he wasn't aware of how big a job he has on his hands before, I think he certainly will be after that 1-1 draw at Ipswich last weekend. They got off to the perfect start, of course, didn't they, Man United, through Marcus Rashford's early goal. But after that, Ipswich were largely dominant and probably unlucky not to go on and claim all 3 points. But to be fair to United, now they are unbeaten in their last 5 in all competitions and only have 1 defeat in their last 10. Probably slightly misleading, albeit, but they are still 12th in the table. So certainly not anywhere near where they want to be. I'm sure he'll be grateful to get his first win as United boss out the way, though, winning last night in the Europa League 3-2 at home to Bodo Glimt. Rasmus Højlund getting a couple goals there too as well, which will be a big boost to him moving forward. I'm sure, as you touched upon, this will be his first home match at Old Trafford, which sees the visit of Everton, who are another side who are difficult to work out. They played out their third draw in their last 4 matches against Brentford last time, as I mentioned earlier on in the show. I'm sure they'd have been disappointed not to go on and win, given that Brentford played large portions of that match with 10 men. And Everton now have failed to score in their last 3 matches in the league. I mentioned last week that I backed them in an ACCA a couple of weeks ago. They let me down and denied me winning that. I backed them last week to beat Brentford as well, and they let me down there as well. So I'm certainly not going to be backing them this week. I've learned my lesson now, finally. United are rightly firm favourites to win this one, as you'd expect. But instead, I'm going to focus on the card line. I'd never back Man United win at the moment either, given the inconsistency and the poor quality overall we've seen from them. So yeah, certainly staying away from the winners line in this one. So as I said, I'm going to focus on the cards line instead. United's fixtures in the Premier League have seen their fair share of bookings so far. 8 of their 12 matches have seen over 4.5 cards in total. I think this has also got the potential for a scrappy match. Again, given the lack of legs in that United midfield, we saw them start of Casemiro and Eriksen, at Portman Road last weekend, and Everton are also a very physical side too. So I think there's a potential for more bookings here, and getting over 4.5 cards at 9-5 generally, I think it's a very, very fair price. Certainly one that I'll be keeping an eye on. As I said, that has came in 8 of Man United's 12 Premier League matches this season, and I wouldn't be surprised that I would see it coming again. So yeah, that's where I'll be going for Man United versus Everton, over 4.5 cards, 9-5 generally.
Oh God, when you say that, I could just envision it in my head, actually, being a really sort of scrappy, But because you've also got to factor in as well that Amorim, he's trying to sort of radically change the tactical approach of this team. And there are going to be times where players are just caught out of position, and Everton can maybe capitalise there. You would not be at all surprised, for example, to see United's fullbacks picking up bookings, would you, as he looks to sort of change the way that they play and approach the game. So yeah, I do like that angle in over 4.5 cards. A very juicy 9-5 there. Could be a good angle into that one. Well, just the game of the weekend left for me then, Liverpool versus Manchester City. I'm sure Brad will be watching this one on the edge of his seat. Liverpool, of course, looking to tentatively put one hand on the Premier League title in November. I'm not sure anyone's ever done that before, really. But yeah, they could go 11 points clear. Wow, you'd have been laughed out of the room for saying that in August, wouldn't you? But could go to 11 points clear of Man City with a victory at Anfield. Well, City snapped their 5-game losing streak in all competitions in midweek. But to be honest, it was felt like a loss because they were 3-0 up against Feyenoord and somehow compounded to draw 3-3. Yeah, some horrendous defensive errors from Gvardiol in there, and yeah, just really silly goals to give away. So yeah, that will have felt like a loss, even though it wasn't. Pep Guardiola, I hope he's cut his nails this week because his head had more scratches than the vinyl record on it by the end of that game. I would be very concerned for his welfare if he hasn't trimmed those nails. But yeah, all jokes aside, City, they've clearly got problems, haven't they? Big problems. Injuries are really taking a toll on them. We all know about Rodri's absence. I don't think you can overstate just how big a issue that is at the moment, because all the areas seem to be playing out from defence into midfield, where normally he would be the man sort of picking that up and recycling the play. So that is clearly causing a lot of issues. But there's also a lot of players that I would consider reliable performers that appear to be out of form. What I would say is when Kevin De Bruyne was introduced, they looked significantly better. So I would think if De Bruyne is anywhere near fit, he has to start here. It's a massive game for them. Generally, I despite everything we've seen in the last few weeks, I really respect Pep Guardiola's sort of ability to regenerate his team for these kind of games, particularly when you're in a must-not-lose situation. They very rarely lose, if that makes sense. So as much respect as I have for Liverpool, I thought they were fantastic in midweek against Real Madrid. However, I do think we said it off camera, Brad, Real Madrid were a little bit disappointed in that fixture, so it's hard to know how much of that was Liverpool's brilliance and how much was Real maybe being below par. Before that, they weren't at the best against Southampton. They needed a bit of a late show from Mo Salah to turn that game around, and there were some issues there. And I think even Liverpool fans would admit that it's not always been fantastic this season, but the results just seem to be there. I think the nature of this game, with City really needing to avoid defeat, brings the draw into play quite significantly here. And just for a little bit of context, the draw is 11-4, which is quite a lot bigger than the Liverpool win or the City win. It's considered the least likely outcome by the market. I don't agree with that. I think I could very much see this ending in a draw. I think that's a result that works for Liverpool. It kind of works for City in that the gap doesn't get any bigger, and they've negotiated their annual trip to Anfield. So yeah, I could definitely see this ending in a draw. I think at 11-4, that might be a bit of a boring sitting on the fence play for some people, but for me, that's just a good value bet, to be honest. So that's the way I'm going to play that, Brad. I don't know, as a Liverpool fan, would you take a draw?
Yeah, it's certainly not the worst result in the world because you're still playing Manchester City and Pep Guardiola, aren't you? I know they're not in the greatest run of form, but Liverpool, if they can maintain that 8-point gap between now and January, I think they'll give themselves a strong chance of going all the way. Of course, there's part of me which is tempted to say, well, let's put them to the sword given their recent performances, but it is, as I said, still Pep Guardiola and Manchester City. It's not that simple. They're still capable of mustering a performance on their day. Like you said, I'm sure they'll be up for this one because their season could be on the line, certainly in the Premier League here. So yeah, draw. Certainly, I still think that suits Liverpool more than it does Manchester City, but it is a must-lose game, isn't it, for them? So yeah, a draw, I'd take it, even though I am tempted, as I said, to go all the way and grab the 3 points.
Yeah, I'll allow you for being a little bit greedy there, but yeah, 11-4, the draw looks a play to me for a neutral, and then you can just kind of kick back and enjoy, can't you? Really, yeah, which is what I will be doing on Sunday. So let's just round up. Our picks for the weekend to finish. Brad, I'll start with you, mate. So we've got Brighton to win and both teams to score. You've also given a shout for João Pedro score or assist at 5-6-1 for the bet builders. Jean-Philippe Mateta over 1.5 shots on target is a big price at 9-2. Brentford to win with both teams to score against Leicester is just over 2-1. Aston Villa a massive 18-5 away at Stamford Bridge and over 4.5 cards in United Everton. Which would be your nap there, please, mate?
I'm quite confident with all of them. You can see none of them's going to come in now I said that, but I do like the Mateta one over 1.5 shots at 9-2. I think that's a very big price, in Villa I still can't get over that price as well. So one of those two I'd probably go for.
Two best bets. I like it. They're mine then. Wolves, Bournemouth over 3.5 goals is 33-20. Chris Wood, anytime goal scorer versus Ipswich 6-4. Arsenal to beat West Ham with under 4.5 goals in the match is just shy of evens. Raul Jimenez to score or assist versus Tottenham is just shy of 2-1. And then Liverpool City draw 11-4. Sorry guys, I'm going to say it. Liverpool City draw is my best bet as well. I just think it might be like a 1-1. It's a little bit disappointing for the neutral, but probably works for all parties, I think, in the grand scheme. But yeah, we shall see how that pans out. Anyway, hopefully it is an extremely super Sunday and not a subpar Sunday, but we will see. Thanks for watching the Premier League Betting Show this weekend. If you're not already, please do press subscribe. We'd love you to join us. We're very close to 500 subscribers here on the channel. It'd be great to hit that target. Going into December, loads coming up on the channel as well over the next few weeks, so we'd love you to stick around. Let us know what your best bets are for the Premier League weekend, and we will catch you again here on Odds Now very soon. Thanks for watching.